bought a hand grenade on Amazon today.
You were talking about buying a hand grenade. 2 interesting announcements, similar announcements. Number 1, Mass Effect 3 is going to be available as a trilogy. Number 2, you're going to be able to buy the Assassin's Creed Ezio trilogy.
Yeah.
Which Assassin's Creed is a trilogy with 4 extra games in the middle. It's fine. Whatever.
It's like if you bought like Star Wars episode like 2, 3, and then like the
Clone Wars
5.
cartoon, and then the last one.
Exactly. You're getting the middle of it. It's like, you know, admittedly you could probably cut it episode 1, but that is an odd thing because everyone's told me, as far as Assassin's Creed go, 3 is the big one. That's getting everyone's attention. People who don't normally care about those games are suddenly interested, and they're like, should I play the other ones? And the general consensus seems to be skip 1, which is the same thing people said about Mass Effect as well.
Well, it's interesting. I think it's good because new Assassin reads to new players as a jumping on point. But the more interesting thing is people asking, should I play 3 games or 4 games in the 4 weeks until this game comes out, just to get caught up on this game? And it's kind of like, it's crazy. Like, this is 60 hours worth of story about one character, and it's kind of made it impossible for new people to get in. It seems insurmountable from the outside, but is it really? Like, do you really need to play a prequel to a game with Ezio to play the next game with Ezio?
I feel like Ubisoft had to have anticipated that this would garner a lot more new followers than before, so they probably made adjustments for that in the beginning of the game. Because I know tons of people who are really stoked about Assassin's Creed 3 and have not played any of the previous games. I think it'll be doable.
I kind of wish that for Assassin's Creed, they'd basically sort of just explain to you that, I mean, the thing is, in Assassin's Creed, you're playing as effectively a guy who's in like a VR simulation of his ancestors' DNA.
Right.
So there's one guy who ties the whole series together, and wouldn't you know it, it's fucking Nolan North, with the voice of
in a hoodie.
Yeah, Nolan North in a hoodie. So, you know, he's traveling through time, and he's going back with his brain and to play as his ancestors, and there's absolutely no reason they couldn't have just had you playing as those ancestor characters.
Because most of the revelations, because that's the name of the game, but most of the revelations that come out in the story come through living in the past, right? They come through these VR reenactments. So why couldn't it just be a story of a different assassin every game that gradually reveals some of this to us? For people who are interested.
I'm guessing...
Do you need like a spanning character?
I'm guessing when they made the first one, they didn't know it would be like as popular as it did, and they wanted to account for that anyway, so they could make like, you know, N+1 sequels.
Like, here's the thing. What is it that attracts people to a game? It should be the mechanics of the game, it should be the design of the world, the overall feeling of the game. I don't know that we need connective stories to bring us from game to game to game, because it just feels like more than anything it can be alienating to a newcomer to the series, and I don't want to read a wiki or play 30 hours of a game, right? I want Zelda. What happens? Oh, there's this guy named Link, and the princess gets kidnapped.
What's he got to do? He's got to fight a big pig guy, and then there you go. It's a fairy tale.
It's a different Link every time.
There's a bad guy, a good guy, and there's a thing he's trying to go after, whether it's a sword or some triangles or a girl or something.
And I think they're trying to make video games movies, and video games aren't movies. You know, we use movies as a template because it's the closest thing I think we have to a video game. But I just want to know that the mechanics and the feeling and the world are going to be the same every time.
I think video games could take a lot of inspiration from like less stuff like the Star Wars universe, where there's just this massive metaverse of metaverses and transmedia and things like that, and more from something like James Bond, where you're like, well, we ran out of the other actor, he left, so we got a different actor to play him. It's still James Bond. You haven't seen the other James Bond movies? Doesn't matter. He's a secret agent. He fights some guys. You know, it's like every time it's a new thing. There are pretty much no James Bond movies that are really direct sequels, except for the really new ones. Mm-hmm. And it's like it's the same character in different situations, dealing with new things. It's, you know, it's episodic.
Yeah,
which I
but
really
how many
like.
movie series are like that besides James Bond?
Well, it used to be it used to be like serials, like Flash Gordon, Indiana Jones, stuff like that. It wasn't, you didn't have to have this, continuing serialized narrative of like, I want to, find out what happened. What's this, what happened between these things? We need to have a
The thing is,
wiki
gamers get really possessive of storylines and games that they're really into.
Oh, it's not just gamers; it's nerds in general.
Yeah.
It's the same problem with comic books. I get people asking me like, "Where's a good place to get into this comic?" And I'm like, there isn't one. I recommend graphic novels or like miniseries because it's like one thing you can pick up. You know where it starts and where it stops.
But so it makes it a little.
They're soap operas.
It makes it kind of hard to get into for people who are new to it. But at the same time, it's the best way to keep an audience going, right? If I started the new Legend of Zelda and it wasn't Link, I would flip my shit, right? And it was, there's a certain amount of continuity that has to happen.
I want the Adventures of Solid Snake without like 3 hours of freaking PowerPoint presentations from Professor Otacon every 20 minutes of gameplay I have. And
Some people like that though.
Some people do
want a PowerPoint
That's
presentation.
great. They should read the news.
I mean,
that must
it-
be exciting for them.
Honestly, it varies from game to game. Like in a game like Mass Effect, I really like the shooting, but people play that game for the story for the most part. A game like Borderlands the story's kind of throwaway almost because they've already built up a solid mechanic with the shooting and everything else is just ancillary. For really cinematic games that are heavily narrative driven like Mass Effect, it's important to have that overarching storyline because people get really invested in all of the characters. And a lot of shit goes down in that series. Whereas Borderlands, like the story in the first one was so throwaway that nobody cared if they continued it for the second one. In fact, I probably would have preferred if they didn't. But and even the second one doesn't have a great story to it, but it's got humor, which makes up for that, I feel.
Yeah, it sounds like they took the first Borderlands. I still haven't really done much, but I played a little bit of the first one,
Yeah.
Haven't touched the second one. Everyone's talking about it, but from what I've gathered, they took what was good about the first one and built off of that, as opposed to scrapping it completely and trying to, rebuild it from the ground up.
Well, when they made the first one, they knew that they already had a solid shooting mechanic in it. So they don't need like a huge story to overshadow that. Whereas Mass Effect was always about the story.
I think I'd rather, even if a game has recognizable characters, I think I'm with Max on this one, where it's like, I would love to just see Shepard do different things. Or I would love to see Ezio do different things, which we kind of do.
The
but I'd like it
Adventures of
without
Spaghetti Ninja. It
Yeah.
would be amazing.
I just want a familiar story, and I do like having the familiar characters, but I want something new out of it every time. I don't like jumping into the middle of a 4-game story. I just don't think there's a need for that in most cases.
That's why games like Rayman are awesome. No story.
Rayman's always been a terrible character.
Rayman has, up until recently, was
Dude,
a very
bite your
terrible
tongue.
series of games.
Bite
He doesn't
your
have any
tongue.
limbs. He's just got
He's too French. You look at him and you're like, you're so fucking French.
I'm gonna throw this in your face.
I think the
He's
same. I
like
think the
that-
same thing when I look
He's like
at him.
that close to being a rejected Olympic mascot.
Actually, I see that now.